Welcome back to just another solar podcast with Luke Beattie, that's me, and Karl Jensen. G'day, Karl.
Luke, how are you?
I'm good. How'd you go after All Energy? You pulled up okay?
Yeah, no problem, mate. A seasoned campaigner, and with all the driving that I had to do, I drank a lot less than I have done at previous years, so it was all good.
Very good. And before we go into a recap of the show, I think we should bring in our guest today. Today we've got Peter Leeson from Leeson Group, and he's also got a really interesting story around the new Volt solar tile, which is something we'll get into. But first of all, welcome to the podcast, Peter.
Karl, Luke, thanks for the introduction, guys. Nice to be here and talking to you both.
So we all got to All Energy last week, and before we started recording, Peter, you were telling me how at very short notice you pulled together a stand and you're an exhibitor.
Yeah, that's right. Look, we obviously have just launched our Volt solar tile, which is one part of the business, which we'll talk about in a sec. But decided that, hey, let's maybe give All Energy a crack. And I've never done a show before. I've always been on the consumer side where I get to wander around and go to the stands and drink their coffee, and then by 4 o'clock drink their beer. And sit down and learn. And this year was the complete opposite. So we managed in about 5.5 weeks to find a spot on the floor, design a stand, build a stand, and so on, and get everything and all the systems and functions you need to actually get the most you can out of a show. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of logistics. I was there the day after to help pack up our small stand, and just spectacular the amount of logistics that goes behind those events that most people don't get to see.
No matter what you think, it's 4 times. So what I thought it would be, it was easily 4 times the amount of work than what we thought it was be. The whole business across multiple parts of our business, our group, sort of had to shut down and just focus on the show for the 2 weeks prior.
Did you have to trade off on some of the networking events and some of the things you'd normally do, or did you just have to pack that in as well?
Yeah, look, I literally went to a couple of meetings and that was it. I managed to get to the Cutter event the night before the show for about an hour and a half. I had 2 beers and went back to the hotel and fell asleep. But pretty much didn't do much. I went out we've got a solar farm business, which I might talk about now, but we went out to a dinner for that, and there was some talks and that sort of thing. But I was in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock. I think that's age and also being a bit wiser about where I need to spend my energy at the show.
Now, Peter, coming back to your journey, we can go to the Volt solar tile eventually, but you didn't just pop up in the industry. Do you want to give us a brief about how you first got into the industry and what that looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I'm an electrician by trade. Started out in solar in about 2008. I think I did my course and got my accreditation and just played with it for the first year, tested products. So I think my first system I installed was on my home, and it was using 100 watt or 90 watt ample sun thin film modules, which were double glass aluminium frame, 1,200 by a meter maybe, and these things weighed like 28 kilos. Started out on that side installing solar, sales and installation, but still primarily electrical contractor. Moved solely into solar only, several years later, and then highly competitive. So started to look at new markets, and BIPV was one of them. So started doing consultancy and work across that sort of building facade, solar tile business. But the big one for us was solar farms. So I wanted to do something different and decided I wanted to be an EPC on solar farms, which, now sounds like a really stupid idea. Being a smaller business, thought the best way to do that would be to develop our own and get investors in. So went out in my ute and started looking for farms next to zone substations, started making offers under option agreements and that sort of stuff. After about 12 months, I'd learned a lot about the town planning, power system, grid connection side, and had acquired 4 or 5 farms. And since then, we've continued to develop a portfolio of solar farms. So we've now developed 150 megawatts of solar farms. We have about 1 gigawatt in development currently. Our largest project is 440 megawatts DC of PV panels with a 400 megawatt, 800 megawatt hour battery on 1,100 hectare site. So, and that's getting to the later stage of development. So we've sort of morphed from this electrical business, solar, into a developer. And now we're in a JV with BNRG Renewables based out of Dublin, where we're going to develop, build, and operate those assets. So we've moved across that sphere. But the great thing that business has brought us is the ability to develop volt solar. And hence, 8 years of development isn't cheap. Bringing a product to market, I didn't know how expensive that would be and the amount of effort that needs to go into it. So we've ended up building this sort of entire business ecosystem around building integrated PV. We've become the specialist sort of company that can install it in Australia and now launch this unique product, which we believe
Hang on, Peter. You rolled over that too fast, mate. I heard 460 megawatt solar farm on one site and 1,100 acres.
Hectares. And 440 megawatts and 1,100 hectares, yes.
Just break that down for the layperson, mate. We're talking hundreds of 40-foot containers of panels and racking and inverters and so on. How long does it take to do a project like that? Surely it's in the years.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, a sub 5 megawatt project from land acquisition to grid connection and plan approval will take me about 12 months or maybe a little bit less. This size project, just to develop alone and get grid connection and plan approvals, is probably 3 to 4 years. To reach financial close, it's probably another year on top of that. Or if you're aligned well, maybe 6 months. And then, construction, maybe 2.5, 3 years. Procurement, what procurement's like lead time on batteries right now. So to get 800 megawatt hours of batteries is not going to be a quick process. So I would say construction's probably sitting from the start of procurement through to energization is commercial operation stage is going to be 3 years. So all in all, from finding a site to actually energization and generating energy and bidding into the market, it's probably 6 to 7 years.
Well, there must be a lot of pitfalls as well. I mean, you were speaking about going from being a Sparky, just doing residential solar, and within 8 years you're doing megawatt solar farms. There must be a lot of pitfalls that would weed out a lot of people or would prevent a lot of people being able to operate in that space.
I think it's a sort of blind ambition to risk, to be honest. I remember when I started my electrical business straight out of my apprenticeship when I was 22. And I remember my mum said to me, what's the cons? Like, what's the risk? And I just said, I've got to pay for my own mistakes. That's it. Like, you have to pay for your own mistakes. But the more ambitious, the more you learn. So I learn something new every day. The companies that sort of hit those pitfalls are generally ones that don't understand their limits. If you don't know what you're doing, engage a consultant to do that and teach you how to do that, or employ someone that knows how to do it. And that's where we see a lot of these international entrants coming into the development space and just not understand how hard it is to get a grid connection, get through the GPS, the dynamic studies, and if you're in the West Murray Zone, the integration assessment and PSCAD modeling, and how much it can cost here. International businesses are just shocked. From a planning perspective, 1,100 hectare site was almost impossible to find. So we've acquired 2 farms over that space, and we've got cultural heritage overlays. We've got subject to inundation, flooding overlays, that sort of stuff. So we have a policy where we do not remove any native vegetation at all. So we don't do offsets because I think it's pointless. If you're going to develop solar farms to try and save the planet, why remove native vegetation that could be a bird path or whatever it might be? It's there for a reason. The planning aspects on a project this large are a nightmare. And then obviously the grid and the competitiveness of the grid connection, and that, we've got open access. So there could be a solar farm 5 kilometres away on the same line that could be going through the same process, and I might not know about them if I haven't done my research. So there's all that sort of risk. And then develop a solar farm of this size, you're talking $4 to $5 million just to develop it. You need to be able to take pretty significant risks to make this to happen.
So that's $5 million basically in time and labour for your staff to get all the pieces in place before you can even start construction.
Absolutely, yeah. And I probably wouldn't focus too much on the business overheads in that. I would say that's more got to do with consultants and fees. To do a full set of grid studies, on a basic 100 megawatt project with a BESS is upwards of $500,000, and that's without the reiteration of studies and negotiations with either the DNS, NSP, or AMO if it's a transmission connection. So then you've got all the AMO and NSP fees on top of that, and all the planning fees. You bump into cultural heritage, there's $700,000. So it comes together very quickly. And then you need a team that's capable of doing a PPA or being able to financially close a project of that size. So yeah, it's all the investment that goes into prior to actually even putting a boot on the ground to start construction.
So speaking of which, Peter, I noticed last week Ryzen sold the Meriden solar farm that was 150 megawatts.
Yeah.
Is that a common sort of method where a manufacturer will? So I believe they bought the plans, the rights, whatever, from the developer. So they bought the plan. They bought the right. They bought the land of someone who had already done the development. Obviously, they then built the farm. And after operating it for 2 years, 3 years, they've now sold it to someone else. Is that how these projects typically pan out?
Well, look, I mean, yeah, there's a number of different things that go into that. So a company like Ryzen, they manufacture their own modules. They've got a pretty good balance sheet, Ryzen. They're quite bankable. Yeah, they've also, the owner's got quite a bit of property development, including here in Melbourne. So they can close a big project. And I believe Meriden, or maybe one of their other ones that they did, was Merchant. So they're selling the energy at Merchant. But basically, the reason you would develop, you sort of get a development upside when you develop a project. So once you've, the money you've put in, say you put $5 million in, you obviously get a pretty significant return. If you were to sell that project, or a smaller project like that might cost you $2 million. So you get your development return. But then if you can financially close, build, own, operate, and then sell 2 years later, that's more within the appetite of funds like pension funds and that sort of stuff. So they're not relying on the engineering only to tell them about the performance of that site. So not just performance in terms of solar generation and that sort of thing, but revenues, constraint assessment, that sort of stuff within the network. So if you can get through that sort of 2 year barrier, you get a far larger upside on the sale of that farm. So let's say that you develop and build a project for $100 million, and your upside might be, if you sell it straight away, might be $30 million. But if you wait 2 years and operate that and prove that asset, it's more bankable. And then the investor that invests in that project might only need a return of 4% or 4.5% rather than a development return of 8.5%. So therefore, the money's cheaper. So you're getting a far higher sale value from just holding that asset for a few years.
Mate, for a Sparky, that's some pretty big words. I'm really impressed, Peter.
It's as I said, like I learn a lot every day. And I was in a meeting yesterday with an advisor on equity and debt raise for some of our projects. And it's not a space that I'm fluent or knowledgeable in yet. But I spoke to our CFO this morning and just said it's so wonderful that you get to learn these things and get to sit in rooms with people that are teaching you new things. So, and I think that goes across anywhere in the industry. My specific skill set is solar farm development now and designing a volt solar tile. But I go back and talk to installers about, the updates in 5033, and I'm learning new things. And they're things that I may have used to have known, but it's just so far gone out of my knowledge because I don't do it anymore.
But Leeson Group still operates in the residential and commercial space as well, right?
We do. Running a solar business, residential, commercial, it's tough. And anyone who says it's not tough is lying to themselves. It's not an easy industry to be in. You've got all the low-cost competitors and that sort of stuff. And the sales and marketing costs are extreme, particularly, going through COVID. We're very lucky because we've got a very diverse business, which we've obviously worked hard for. But our solar retail business is simply there to be the leader in the installation of building integrated solar tiles. The only reason I've kept that business going to this point is to service Volt Solar Tile and to teach all the other solar companies in Australia how to install this product and keep up to date with standards and compliance. Now, to have a team of engineers, salespeople, construction manager, electricians, and apprentices that know how to install solar tiles, that would cost me a fortune. So I may as well run a solar business, maintain and build that knowledge. And then our plan is to go and teach all these other solar companies, which will be, our Volt partners in Volt Solar Tile, how to do this and how to do it properly.
So do you want to give us just a quick rundown on the specs of the tile and some of the other considerations for the install of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I'll pull me up if I go on too long because there's a lot to talk about. But ultimately, from a technical specification, we have two different products. One's a Platinum, one's a Lodged. Why are they called that? Because they're the tiles that they integrate with. So a flat concrete roof tile made by Bristol here in Australia, it's sort of your standard sort of roof range, roof tile that goes on your generic new home. And then you've got the terracotta Platinum roof tile, which is a terracotta roof tile manufactured by Lascandela in Spain. 50-year color warranty, one of the best tiles going around, extremely difficult to install solar on. I know a lot of solar installers listening probably have come up against these clay Lascandela Platinum roof tiles and, grind them and find the right bracket to work is a nightmare. But that's the other tile that we integrated with. So the Platinum is 115 watt solar tile, and it's about 18.8% efficient from memory. And the Lodge is a 105 watt solar tile, which is 19.5% panel efficiency. So the two products are what we believe, and all our research shows that we're the highest efficiency solar tile in the world, which is, sort of a pretty good claim to fame. And the key thing is we needed to get as close as possible to standard modules in efficiency. And we've done that by really maximizing the real estate of the exposed area of the roof tile / solar tile. It's key. So we only integrate with the Bristol roof tile, and we've done that because we've had a reasonably long partnership with Bristol, and they're pretty committed to solar roofs. A lot of people in the industry might know of Bristol have released a solar tile previously, and this is like their version 2 with an updated sales model. Volt is solely owned by myself and my business partners, though privately held. But our partnership with Bristol allows solar companies to go and sell and install this themselves. So unique product, pretty good price point compared to anything that's been out on the market before. But the sales model is that we are partnering with 100 solar companies around Australia, calling them Volt partners, to be able to go and sell solar to builders, any builders, wherever they might be working. So the solar company will, they've been introduced to us. They'll get all the technical training, knowledge, marketing, that sort of stuff. And they'll go and speak with builders, and they can just quote solar in Open Solar, whatever software they use, like they would quote any other solar panel system. They then upload the drawings, not the pricing, but the drawings and just the spec of the tile to a portal with the builder's details, and that goes straight across to Bristol, and they quote the roof. So the solar company does not need to worry about the roof or anything like that. And one of the key blockers to stopping solar companies from actually selling and installing solar tiles in the past is you need to have a roofing license. And I don't know of many solar companies that do have roofing licenses here in Australia. So Bristol provide that signing off of the overall roof and system of the home. Plus, they're also an ASX listed business owned by Brickworks Group. So all the builders already trust them. They know every architect and builder in the country. So it's highly likely that the builder that you're going to talk to will have access to purchase Bristol roof tiles. That sales model, we believe, is really going to help scale here in Australia. Ultimately, a blocker previously for solar tiles or building integrated PV is that the roofing companies have tried to sell solar, where they've got no idea about inverters, voltage windows, maximum power point tracking, startup voltage of inverters, that sort of thing. So they're just going in blind, and they're basically roof tile salespeople or account managers trying to sell solar. So we're going to have 100 solar companies around Australia out there progressively selling solar tiles and standard solar panel systems to builders. And so, with the knowledge of how to sell solar, and then on the roofing side, Bristol will be backing it and selling the roof. And we believe this is sort of the key to one of the reasons BIPV and solar tiles hasn't yet really taken off.
I know that the building standard's changing to 7-star energy efficiency from October. Is this something that builders can use in the energy calculation of the building from the get-go?
Yeah, absolutely. So the NCC 2022 was just obviously released in October. It gets implemented in May, and there's a transition period until October next year. And there's two parts. The first part is going from a 6-star to a 7-star home, and that's about the thermal envelope. So insulation, wall, ceiling, floor insulation, windows and this sort of thing, and also about thermal members going through a building. So say you've got a big steel beam going from your pergola to inside the house, that'll carry heat in and out of the home. Or, so those thermal members are also considered in that envelope. But the key part that affects the solar industry is the energy budget. So you've got an annual energy budget, and it's a societal cost of energy. So it's including gas. So it's more about carbon. And what they do is they add together the lighting, the space heating and cooling, any pools and spas, and the hot water consumption, whether it be gas or electricity. So they add those together, and that's above the energy budget. So you don't have efficient enough appliances for the location. So the climate location and square meter floor space of the home, then you will need to have renewable generation on the home, which i.e. cheapest form is solar. So that is going to mean, we believe, about 80 to 90% of new homes have solar power installed during the build process, rather than what generally happens is the builder's margins make the solar too expensive. So the homeowner will just get solar installed later on if they do want to get it. If you talk about 100,000 semi-detached dwellings built every year, and let's say a minimum of 6 kilowatts on each, or an average of 6 kilowatts on each home, that's a 600 megawatt market that's pretty much untapped. We think about 15 to 20% of new homes currently have solar on them. We work with a lot of builders, and they're the sort of numbers that we get back. So whilst, the 3 gigawatts that we install annually in Australia, both in C&I and residential, C&I might be increasing and residential might be getting a slightly smaller. It's a significant part of the market. And what could potentially be 20% of the rooftop solar market.
That's the best summary I've heard of the energy rating thing so far, Peter, because obviously there's a hell of a lot of information there for people to digest, and you managed to sum it up in a grand total of 2 minutes. But it seems to me that the solar tile is hitting the market bang on the right time, because if I sign up for a new build today, there's absolutely no chance that anything's happening for 6 months anyway. So this is something that builders need right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And our inquiries have shown that. Things are going pretty crazy since we've launched the product, both across the consumer space, the builder space, the architects, and also solar companies asking how they can get in on this. But the key thing for us is, we know that not every home is going to have Volt on it, and it'd be ridiculous to think that I could deliver 600 megawatts a year in the next couple of years in Australia, particularly when we've also got markets that we're working in internationally as well. But a solar company can come and become a Volt partner, and they can go to the builder and say, look, we can give you the integrated option, and we'll give you the standard panels. And, we've got, batteries and car chargers and all that sort of stuff as well. And not every home's going to take Volt. It might be 10% of your sales. It might be Volt. But ultimately what's going to happen, it's going to give our Volt partners access to that market, access to that 600 megawatt market. And that's the key thing. If we can build your business with us, you're going to become more bankable. You're going to have higher profits. You're going to pay the bills, which is fantastic, particularly being a manufacturer distributor in the solar industry, as I know both of you would clearly understand how painful that can be. So,
mate, Luke and I are really good at helping other people make money.
Yeah. So that's the new build opportunity, and it is huge, I agree. But what about retrofits? Is it limited to Bristile roofs, or is it not the done thing? Is the main target new builds?
It is only a new build product. You do not want to retrofit this. And many salespeople will say to you, yeah, we can retrofit this onto your roof if you've got Bristile tiles. It doesn't work. And there's a number of reasons why it doesn't. But typically, roofs are all about batten spacings. But if you're going to install a roof tile compliantly, you need to have like a 1 to 2 mil gap between each roof tile. And they're not always installed like that because, obviously the concrete will expand and contract as it gets hot and cold. And if you lay them all really hard up together, your tile gaps are not going to be wide enough for our solar tile because we're a fixed size and we are 5 concrete roof tiles wide and 7 terracotta roof tiles wide. So, there's a number of different things. And then you've got batten spacing. So if your batten spacings aren't correct, and with for example, our terracotta roof tile that we work with, it's a 315 to a 370 mil batten spacing. So you can lay it at that width. And roof tiles don't want to be cutting roof tiles on the top row. So what they'll do is they'll calculate from the ridge to the gutter and then they'll space their battens accordingly so they can just lay them and get out of there. So it's a real important thing to note that you do not want to be trying to retrofit this, because your installers will hate you forever. And yeah, I've been there and tried it. So yeah, being a Sparky myself. So yeah, it's a new home build and focused purely on the new build market. Alternatively, if you are going to re-roof your home, absolutely, you can go in as a re-roof.
So you've got the roofer coming in and putting the tiles in. I'm guessing it's a pretty simple connection.
Yeah, so we've done over 300 solar tile systems, to date, not Volt, but other products. And basically, the hardest part is the solar company needs to show, or the installers need to show up on site the same day or very near to the same day as the roofers, because roofers are out really quickly. So you'll get there on the day, team of 2 to 3. You'll work out with the roofer what roof plan you're working on. They'll start laying the sarking, or we generally use a proctor wrap, a breathable membrane, and the battens, and then you'll just pre-wire it from the switchboard inverter location up to the roof. By the time you've done that, the sarking and battens are down within 15 minutes to 30 minutes. You simply just get up on the roof, you lay your first solar tile, and then you get the next one and you lay it next to it, and you plug your MC4s together, and there's this aluminium cable containment system in the back which fully encapsulates the cable and the MC4s. So you don't need to worry about tying up cables. You don't need to worry about crawling under solar modules and try and get that cable tie in that's 400 mil down from the top of the module and cutting your arms and getting wedged between a hot roof and a solar panel. It's simply, you just lay the first row, you go back, you earth them, which is just all done with crimps, and you screw them all in, and then you start with the next row. The next row just interlocks in. So our solar tiles are the only ones on the market, and we've got a patent for this, in which the top of the solar tile locks into the bottom of the next solar tile up. So what happens if you've got a roof that, say, there's a variance of 10 mil over your 7 tiles wide, what this actually does is it pulls it down and interlocks in. So you've got a fully sealed roof, but B, when it's clicked in, you can sort of clicks in like an MC4. So you push it in, click it down, and then screw it in. And the other benefit of this is that you can't have cross tile shading. So what happens if you have too short of batten spacings is your top solar tile will overlap the cells on the solar tile below and cause shading. And this interlocking mechanism prevents that from happening. And and you just lay like that. So no grinding tiles, no mounting system, nothing like that. It simply goes onto the batten, and there's 2 tech screws that go into the batten at the back of the solar tile. So once the first system's going to be hard, because it's like nothing that a solar installer will have ever done before, unless I've done solar tiles. But after 3 or 4 systems, we think it's about half the time to install as a standard sort of panel system. And that's not like your speed solar crew that's smashing in 5 kilowatts in half a day. That is, 4 kilowatts will take you, 4 to 5 hours max.
So where's the disconnection point?
So disconnection point. So we've got our trunking system that sits behind the module. Then we've got an extension piece that sits under that. And then you have your MC4s and a labeled disconnection point there. So you can simply slide the roof tile up with the label on it and then disconnect the MC4s under there. Sadly for us, we spent over a year developing a built-in integrated rooftop isolator, which had like a little steel handle that came out from underneath the roof tile. And this thing was genius. And we'd use the steel Catco isolators in the roof, everything enclosed. And we had this amazing isolator that was lockable on the roof. And you could literally pull it down, it was on, and push it up, it was off, and lock it out. And you could never see it. And it was wonderful. And we've got about 200 sitting in a warehouse. They're manufactured in Eltham in Victoria. They're worth a lot of money to make, because they've got a whole heap of moving components. And then 5033 change, which when I was on the installer reference group with the CEC, we were pushing really hard for that to happen. But it's so we had a solution before, and we've got a solution now.
That's one of those things that happens, Peter. I know that, obviously, Luke and I are both under the umbrella of SolarGain, and they had hundreds of earth fault alarms for SMAs that cost a couple of $100 a piece. And obviously, they're completely worthless. They're lucky to be, backup alarms for the utes or whatever. Just junk.
Yeah. If only you could swap those back for STP screens that were going bad 10 years ago. I don't know if you guys saw with the tri-powers that the screens would all go. So see if you can get a credit on those ones and swap them over for a few LED screens.
There were other things like stainless steel earth straps that had to go between the joins in the rails at one point there that were $5 or $6 each, and you had thousands of them. And someone said you can do it with a serrated washer, and all of them went out the window, scrap value.
Yeah. In developing our solar rooftop isolator, we were getting in, our first version was like basically a roof tile, and we mounted a IP rated handle on the top of it and drilled the holes in the roof tile. But this was the only IP rated, it was a NHP product, IP rated handle that could face upwards. And then we'd have the isolator in the roof underneath it on the tile. And I think we got one part number wrong when we were ordering these products that had to be, brought in internationally. And they got here and they were completely the wrong isolator cover. And they were, $50 each, a couple of hundred of them. It's just like, and I was down there a couple of days ago in the warehouse. I'm like, what's this box of isolator handles? And they're just been sitting there for about 5 or 6 years.
With the strategy, you're looking for a national network for the Volt solar tiles. Also read something on your website looking to export or to operate in other markets as well. What's the plans there?
Yeah, absolutely. So because we fit the La Scandella Platinum roof tile, and La Scandella is a Spanish-based roof tile manufacturer. They've actually got the largest roof tile manufacturing plant in the world. I think they spit out 5 tiles a second or something like that. Yeah, they export to 85 countries. So we've just entered into a distribution agreement with them where we're working across all 85 countries in their existing distribution channels. So we've got our first installation in Barcelona in a few weeks' time. I'll go over there for that one. And then, we're looking at other markets, particularly the US is a big one for us, Israel and a few other markets right now to preliminary kick it off. But ultimately, what we're looking to do is bring manufacturing here to Australia. So we've got a very customized product. And as such, it's not made on our solar module itself is made on a 2 gigawatt line. So it's fully automated, and that's really good. But to make our extrusions and cut them for the external frame, there's not a sort of fully automated line in China that's doing that. So late next year, we're going to set up our own extrusion, cutting and assembly plant, and we'll buy the laminates from China, from our current manufacturer. And then by early 2025, we're hoping to be running actual solar modules off the line here as well. So it'll be very similar to a Tindo, but we believe that we can do that at the same cost as what we're currently paying for the product through having advanced manufacturing. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And that's also bringing some of the value add back into the country.
Yeah, exactly. Jobs and taxes. For decades, we've been coming up with these amazing solar, PV technologies. We export the IP to the rest of the world, and they capitalize on it, commercialize it, and then become the powerhouse. And look at what happens. We've finally got a government in that's got some decent renewable energy targets and sustainability targets. And we're going to run out of modules globally to keep up with those targets. And we will have the peaks. We'll have plenty of modules. We'll have oversupply, and then we'll have a lot coming online, and then we'll be looking for them again. And the only way to mitigate that risk, both from things like COVID with shipping and wars and all this sort of stuff, is to manufacture locally. So by Volt starting to manufacture a very bespoke product in Australia and exporting around the world, that means we can hit a pretty decent volume. And I don't know of any other solar modules or solar manufacturers that are looking to manufacture here and export around the world. That would be a very hard thing to do with a standard module because it wouldn't be competitive. But by manufacturing here, increasing the volume, and then partnering with other solar module manufacturers, like maybe a Tindo or a SunDrive or someone like that, we might be able to get some level of vertical integration, get the big glass manufacturers to focus on making the right glass for the modules, and then maybe one day we could make ingots here and wafers and cells. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? And then we've got proper energy independence. We've removed a whole heap of sovereign risk. We're going to have jobs here, and And maybe in parallel with that, we might be able to have some sort of car manufacturing at the same time, which has got nothing to do with this podcast, but a lot to do with advanced manufacturing and jobs in Australia.
I agree with you. If we can pull back some of that independence, it's a good thing, but also like the Volt solar tile, seeing some more innovation. We're not just producing solar panels, you've got a custom solution, which is really cool. So do you think we're going to see a lot more of that?
Yeah, I've spoken to Glenn, the owner of Tindo in the past, and he's a big one for Australian manufacturing. And I'd never used Tindo, and I went and saw his manufacturing line, and I was so impressed with what they're doing there and how they're bringing manufacturing here. I think that, obviously FFI under Twiggy Forrest is looking to bring in some, pretty significant manufacturing capability with hydrogen and then also I think it's thin film that he's looking at. I'm not quite sure of the technology. You've got SunDrive here now. They're a small crew. They've had a lot of funding from both government and then also from equity raises and that sort of stuff. But they've got a pretty cool technology. But there's a lot of money and a lot of way to go to commercialize that. But I think that we're going to slowly move towards it. Unless a really big player can partner with government to bring a manufacturing line here, I don't think it's going to happen for a little while. And I think it's going to take more of these sort of bespoke products and then Tindo's angle of an Australian-made product to ramp up the scale and work on those, those government projects and those developers and partners that actually want to promote the industry of manufacturing solar modules here. So if we can get 5 or 6 companies together to actually work together and say, right, well, we're competitors, but if we work together, we could actually bring vertical integration here and the government's going to support that. And that's when it'll be a little bit of an aha moment. Okay, we can do this. We need a gigawatt of manufacturing capability. But if you've got 5 companies that are all doing 200 megawatts each across different spaces, then it kind of works.
I reckon Mike Cannon-Brookes, Sun Cable, I reckon he needs at least a gigawatt of manufacturing capacity for that project.
I think he needs a few more gigawatts of manufacturing. Were they up to 18 gigawatts or something now?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, if you had 2 or 3 gigawatts worth of manufacturing in the Northern Territory, you just wheel them out the back and plonk them on the ground. So, after you're here, Peter, I guess our next guest needs to be Mike Cannon-Brookes.
Hey, look, I'd be happy for the introduction and see how we could build a manufacturing plant together. But I don't think you'd be too willing to talk to me. So
you'd be surprised.
Keep doing what you're doing, man. And let's take a different angle here. You're at All Energy. You got to the coalface, got to speak to the installers and interested parties. What were some of the biggest questions or objections?
Oh, look, this was a lot of fun because I've been in the solar tile space for such a long time. We were very well versed and prepared for what questions might come, but ultimately there's a lot of skepticism about, what happens if we've got to pull this out in 20 years? What are you going to do with the roof? And, the fear being that Volt might not be here at that point in time, but we're not some sort of custom roof tile product that, there are 2 other solar tile manufacturers in Australia that have their own custom roof. So it's not it doesn't integrate with a sort of standard roofing product. Not mentioning names, but if they were to have to come out, how would you replace those solar tile systems? Okay, that might be a problem. But ultimately, if there are any issues, you can literally just pull ours out and replace it with the roof tile, and it's not a problem. But where I feel that building integrated PV is going is that every tiled roof in 20 years' time will have a solar tile on it. I do not think, in 20 years' time, if we're all still kicking here having a beer, we'll have a conversation about how dumb was that you get on a roof that's just installed and you'd lift all the tiles and you'd flip them over and you'd get an angle grinder and you'd grind out little slots so the roof was no longer waterproofed. And then you'd flip the tile back over, put a bracket underneath it, slide it in, put this huge aluminium mounting system on there, whack panels on top. It's just a lot of work for no real reason. So that transition's going to happen, and it might not be for 5 to 10 years, maybe the second half of this decade before we see this huge amount of uptake and people just go, look, if it's a tiled roof, we're just going integration because it's about the same cost as normal panels anyway. So a key one was the objection around what happens if it needs to come out and how do you deal with that? And then for the more technical people who sort of an installer perspective is like, how on earth are you going to manage those cables to be compliant with AS5033? And obviously we've got a fully encapsulated cable trunking system where they just sit in there and you plug them together. And then what you asked before, the disconnection point, that sort of stuff. And then, a lot of them are just like, yeah, great. Like we've seen it before, but we have no idea how it's sold or what happens, what's the method. But once we explain that sales model and sort of bring in that power to the solar company to have access to finally be able to sell solar tiles, it turned a lot of the people that were just this, they look at it, they go, it looks great. And they just laugh at me. It's never going to work. By the time you went through that pitch, they were like, great. All right. Yep. Let's talk. How do we become a partner? And we had 160 vault partners or potential vault partners through the stand. And, even some of the people I know in the industry who have criticized, me on the Cutters Forum and that sort of stuff for being in this solar tile market have turned around and said, well done, credit to you. You persisted with it. And it looks like you've got a product that's going to nail it. So the reception was excellent and we couldn't be happier.
So, Peter, if you happen to be looking for a really good sales guy to help you at Intersolar next year, I know a guy.
Is he looking at me right now and smiling?
Oh, come on, Karl.
Probably. So, what's the plan there for Europe? Obviously, you've got a European Spanish tile manufacturer on board. It makes absolute sense that you've got to launch this product in Europe. How do you logistically go about that?
Yeah, look, I think what we're trying to really do right now is get this vault partner model nailed in Australia and then continue through our distribution channels. Whilst I've done some very large solar farms, we're still privately held. So this is, there is no external investors other than myself, my brother, and our CFO. So we're going to have to go through an equity raise at some point in time to really scale and launch and set up offices internationally. Because it's okay to do a show, but if I were to go to Intersolar or SPI and have the success that we've had at All Energy, we would be in a lot of trouble just delivering the technical sales, marketing, all that sort of stuff and training that's required to sell and install the product. So what we're doing right now is we're focused on the Australian market and growing it here. We're building our team on the international side on how we approach it and the strategy around the best markets to go to. We'll obviously go through some sort of equity raise. Well, we're entering into an equity raise now. And then by mid next year, we're going to kind of be ready for the Intersolars and the SPI and have a team ready to go in the different regions that we think are going to be our best markets to work in.
Yeah, Peter, the funny thing about this is that the opportunity in Europe has never been greater. Obviously, there's a massive energy crisis going on in Europe right now.
Yeah.
We're hearing every day from manufacturers like FIMA, SMA, Fronius. The demand in Europe is absolutely insane. And hence, you mentioned a battery supply issue. Battery manufacturers are telling us that they can get 25, 30% more money for their product selling it into Europe than into Australia. And therefore, bad luck. We just don't get the supply.
Yeah.
So I'm wishing you all the best in advance for the Europe trip because the market there is just absolutely enormous. And there's plenty of people who historically have said, forget it. I'm not interested in having solar panels on my roof. They look terrible. And there are a whole heap of re-roof, whilst you say that re-roofing is unrealistic, my parents have just spent 150 grand re-roofing their house.
Re-roofing's a huge market for us. It's a huge market. Yeah. And the other one too is for our vault partners. Think about re-roofing and we know, we've obviously got relationships with a lot of the re-roofing companies through Bristol that we can introduce our vault partners to. You're doing jobs tomorrow, not in 9 to 12 months' time. So the beautiful thing about the build process is if you sell a job and you make it really clear to the builder that you've got to let us know when you've sold the home and you've got vault going on it, that you just got to send us a purchase order for when that's going to happen. The vault partner just clicks a button in our portal and it reserves that stock for 9 months' time or 6 months' time, whenever that frame's up and the roof's going on. So, it's going to be a nice feeling as a solar business, not necessarily vault, but vault as well. But for our vault partners to be able to turn around and go, oh yeah, we're booked out for this year. Like we've got builds with Volt or standard panels for the next 12 months, and know that you've got that consistent workflow at a predictable margin. I mean, predictable margin, I say, obviously panel prices can be variable. We will be locking in our Volt pricing once we get those orders in. It's a good market to be in for that long-term forecast of revenue. But on the re-roofing market, a re-roof goes on in 4 weeks' time. So you could sell Volt today and be installing it in 4 weeks' time if you're working in that re-roofing space.
Also a pretty good position to be in for a manufacturer or distributor to have orders 9 months in advance. I always have this joke with Karl that, sometimes 100 kilowatt installs pop out from behind a tree because you get panic people 2 days out from install chasing panels, racking and inverters for 100 kilowatt installs.
Yeah. What do you mean I can't have it now? What do you mean I need to pay another 2 cents a lot? Yeah. But, look, and we've, about 3 years ago, I employed my own software developer in our business. We work on the Salesforce platform, and we've been developing our software for this. We've got our own schedule and job systems within Salesforce and obviously our ordering system. So we'll be able to forecast, as our Vault partners have to upload the quote, so Bristol can go and quote the roof. We'll be able to forecast, and we'll have algorithms around actually understanding what the close rate is to make sure that we've got stock for our Vault partners as well. So that's going to support, obviously making sure that we're delivering for our customers and they're not wondering if the modules are going to come or not. But additionally to that, it's also going to help us from a manufacturing perspective when we do start manufacturing here to forecast, okay, we need these cells, we need this glass, we need this aluminium, we need all this, and we need it by then. So, we've really focused on all aspects of the business to make sure that it's a really solid business case.
And you mentioned integration with Open Solar. I'm guessing you'll be pushing for integration with all of the major quoting tools in the market.
Absolutely. I mean, basically, at the end of the day, we're just a module. So we could go down the path with Open Solar, and we actually are talking to them now about how we put the, have all the sales data and that sort of stuff in there. But ultimately, we're just a size solar module. So we're uploading our data sheet now to Open Solar, so it's accessible. But, if any of the other quoting softwares want to come and speak to us, absolutely, we can provide all the spec and how it goes together. Part of the fact is too, like with our Vault partners, we'll be providing all the sales support, the marketing knowledge, and even to the point that we'll get our teams out there to help train on the install. You can watch a video on how to install a product, but you're never going to learn how to get that cable to sit up properly or what the best way to run your earth is and that sort of stuff without having someone there actually training you. So we'll be working pretty closely with our partners to make sure that they fully understand the product and the ease of installation and the best methods to do it.
Excellent. Now, before we wrap up, we normally have a question that's more personal related. And I think for someone like yourself who has done so much, gone from being a Sparky to doing solar farms and now a manufacturer, you must be incredibly busy. How do you counterbalance a very busy professional life?
I try not to drink too much, but it tends to become a very bad habit, particularly during COVID. Yeah, look, I think that the health space is super important. I've not recently, but over the last couple of years, as things have gone very hectic, have a pretty strict training, regime. I sort of joined the 5 a.m. club, and I get up at 5 a.m. most mornings. I'll go to the gym. I'm right into my Wim Hof, so ice baths and breathing. The Wim Hof has an app that you can download. It costs you like $3-4 a month. And just the breathing alone, I do it prior to any podcasts and interviews because it just calms me down. I get very anxious and nervous before an interview. So I find that if I do my breathing exercises, I'm super calm.
But you also do the ice baths as well?
I do the ice baths. It's been very challenging. I started doing ice baths about 4 months ago. I went and did a Wim Hof retreat. And it was up in Jindabyne, and we're literally sitting in the rivers under the mountains. Wow. And it was, in your undies, and it was very intense. We did a 5K hike up a hill. Everyone just had to wear shorts. You weren't allowed to wear tops, so it's just shorts and shoes. But it was, an experience that you understand about the cold immersion and how much it can benefit your health and your mental health. As probably with a lot of people throughout COVID, I struggled heavily with anxiety, and my mental health was really bad, particularly just seeing all our money going down the drain in terms of trying to run a business in Melbourne and being in constant lockdowns. But, the importance of exercise, running, and just, probably also make myself available to see my kids. So I get up 3 days a week and go straight to the gym, come to the office, but I leave early and pick the kids up from school. And then the other 2 days of the week, I try to drop them off at school, and then I'll work till 6 or 7 at night. I have a rule around working at night that I have a lot of international meetings, but I don't do any work. So since I got with All Energy, it's unrealistic. I've just been working 24/7. But when you can find a good routine, I don't do any actual office work, but I will join, the Zoom meetings with Rome, the US or Europe or whatever it might be that needs to happen. But making sure that, if you can get out of the meeting by no later than 10. But some days I have meetings that finish at 11:30, and then I have a horrible morning trying to get up at 5 and I'm exhausted for 2 days afterwards. So that's probably just the fitness and the routine for me has been the key to get through it. But I'm not going to lie, like I've laid on the floor of my boardroom having an anxiety attack and not being able to breathe. It's several times over the last 10 years. This is like many other people. It's real. Panic attacks are real and anxieties are real. And sometimes you deal with it well and sometimes you don't deal with it well. And I find the best way to sort of overcome a lot of it has been through fitness and my health, because then it rolls into my mental health. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. And when you're a better dad and you're a better husband or you're a better friend, I find that everything else sort of rolls out from there.
You get the positive feedback.
Absolutely.
I also go to the gym 5 a.m., been doing that for about 9 years now.
Yep.
And similar thing, and it's good to be physically fit and it does help carry you through. I think getting that endorphin dump first thing in the morning means a whole lot. And similarly, cutting out time for the kids and times where you're not accessible is important because there's always the pull to be accessible 24 hours and to action things instantly. Being able to keep those boundaries works really well. But I'm interested, and do you think with the anxiety and anxiety attacks, I mean, that's something that other people experience, absolutely. Is that something that's improving or you can overcome, or is that something that just needs to be managed?
I think for anyone it needs to be managed. I do notice it gets worse if I'm not looking after myself. Like if I'm drinking too much and like when I say drinking too much, it might be 2 beers at night or a couple of glasses of wine. But if I do that consistently for 2 weeks in a row because I have to stay up late and work and I've got all those pressures, it's just a snowball effect. So I find it gets worse. But so it's always going to be there. It's always going to need to be managed. When I'm managing it well, I'm okay. When I'm not managing it well, I'm not okay. And then on the other side, if I'm on the cusp of, losing a heap of money because something's going wrong or, something really is really stressful, or the big one for me is people. I get really upset if a staff member has criticized and left, or there's a problem with an employee. Those are the things that really stress me out a lot. Is we've got a really great culture in our business. We've got ping pong downstairs and we have a lot of fun. But then when I do have a staff issue, that really gets to me. And that's something that will really trigger my anxiety and cause those issues. So when things are hard, the anxiety is always going to come out. When things are easier, it gets easier. But if you don't maintain that, some sort of routine and some sort of way around it, then you're always going to be constantly battling it. So, I have highs and lows, probably a bit like the solar coaster. They could equate to your mental health.
You could probably have that on a map where the solar industry's gone well, when it's gone down, and your personal well-being.
Yeah, 1 month later. Exactly.
Mine's a bit simpler than yours, Peter. I just go out there and rip the Tesla a new asshole if I'm stressed, and that really works for me.
You were telling me about your techniques at the show, which I was quite impressed with, how you get that little bit extra power. I've only got the base model S, but it hammers just for your standard sort of car. It absolutely hammers. And I've always driven diesel utes, so it's like hopping in this thing. It's like a Lamborghini, and where I live. So why all those windy roads? I have fun every morning on the way to the gym because there's just no one there. It's 5 a.m. and the hammering up the roads just like gets you excited.
Absolutely. One way to start a day with a bang is ripping in a Tesla.
Spot on. I love it.
Well, that's all we've got time for today, Peter. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing. So Peter Leeson from Leeson Group and Volt Solar Tiles, really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for your time, Luke. Thanks, Karl.
Another show where I've been blown away. We just seem to be so lucky with the incredible people that we have on the show. Thank you very much for being here, Peter.
Too kind, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Please share it around and subscribe, like. Have a good one. Cheers.